Hey there, guys. Today we're going to be taking a trip into the Happy Hour House of Horror for some Friday the 13th comics. First up, we got Jason Goes to Hell, the Final Friday from Topps Comics. This was released between July and September of 1993 and is written by Andy Mangels with art by various motherfuckers. It is an official movie adaptation, so you can reckon it's going to be pretty close to the movie that we got around the same time. And if you reckon that, your reckoning would be correct. Plays out almost exactly like the movie, give or take a couple of scenes. Basic gist of it, if you've never seen the movie itself, warning, there will be spoilers, is that the government has kind of cooked up this plan to lure Jason out with a damsel in distress so they can blow his ass away, hopefully ridding the world of him for good. This bounty hunter named Duke is pretty sure that that's bullshit, not actually what's gone down, and that turns out to be the case because Jason somehow uses mystical powers that he's acquired with no explanation to sort of compel the medical examiner to take big old bites out of his black oozing heart, which then possesses him, and now Jason is running around in the bodies of other people. Turns out that his, I guess you would call it like his great niece, I'm not gonna fuck with the family tree, some distant relatives of his, a lady, her daughter, and her granddaughter, are living in Crystal Lake, and he needs to come find them so that he can be reborn through them, much like he has been reborn, in a sense, through this medical examiner. If he can possess one of their bodies, he is reborn for real, and his cycle of killing starts all over again. Naturally, Duke does not want this to happen, so he's trying to convince people that's the case, and to help him out to the end of, destroying Jason for good. The lady's daughter has a boyfriend named Steve, who also gets caught up in this mess of trying to protect them from Jason, and it's really just kind of a mess, much like the movie. After Duke and Steve both get thrown in the fucking clink for a bit, they end up breaking out, and they have kind of a final showdown with Jason, and Jessica, I guess, is the name of the main girl, like the lady's daughter and the mother of the baby, at the old Voorhees house, where Jason turns into this weird slug creature, possesses the body of Jessica's mother, and, they end up having to fight it out with him for a minute right there, before Jessica finally stabs him in the chest with a special dagger that Duke gave her, or rather a regular dagger that turns special because Duke gave it to her. One more thing in this shit that doesn't have any explanation whatsoever. She ends up shanking that motherfucker anyways. Steve gives him a good old karate kick to drive it home, and the demons come up from hell to pull Jason down. At the end, we see Freddy's glove come up, grab the mask, that iconic scene that had us all waiting with bated breath for years and fucking years for that movie to finally come out. And it's all pulled off pretty nicely in comic book form here. I think the only real drawback of this little three-parter is the fact that they change artists, or rather drastically change styles of artists on the second issue. The first and the last issue seem pretty uniform, even though they are done by different artists. The second one seems real plain and almost kind of lazy. It has its moments. It's adequate art. It's just not as good as the other two, and it kind of takes you out of it for a minute. Another thing I think that this little three-parter lacks is it does pull the punches on some of the gore. Now, granted, I can understand that because it's like a fucking trading card company putting out these comics back in the early 90s. There's only so much they could get away with. If you really want the gory stuff, you gotta go with the newer Jason comics. This stuff is adequate, like I said, but it doesn't quite cut the mustard and live up to what you would expect, even from an adaptation of the movie. There's certain scenes, like especially when he hamburgers that guy's face on the medical table at the beginning, that I was really looking forward to seeing done in comic book form, and we got kind of skimped on that. Now, I must say, anything this lacks in any department, it does make up for in just absolutely great presentation. All three of the covers are awesome. They've got the little forwards at the beginning that catch you up on the story, kind of fill in some details they don't have time to detail in the fucking script of the actual issue. And at the end of each issue, I think at the end of all three, you get a behind the scenes thing for Jason Goes to Hell, the movie, which is pretty awesome as well, if you're a fan of the movie. I know a lot of people aren't, so a lot of people might just write off this comic book adaptation. And I can respect that, I guess. Lots of people didn't like the movie, they thought it was hokey and kind of dumb. I've always enjoyed it and had a lot of nostalgia for it, as it was the newest movie at the time when I was a little kid getting into these. And I've always kind of liked the fact that they tried to do something different with it. But much like the movie suffers from the fact that they sort of try these new ideas but then don't take the time to explain any of them or flesh them out, it's just kind of like, here's a concept, have fun with it. That's exactly what happens in this little trilogy of issues here. So you're left with the same kind of questions you might have had before, and you can't help but feel like in this comic book adaptation, they missed an opportunity to give it a little bit more depth than it had to begin with. I would say that this is definitely a worthy companion to any Friday the 13th collection. If you're a fan of the movie, or even if you're not, it's only 3 issues. It would be really cool to have all these framed with like a Friday the 13th display of all the movies on DVD, Blu-ray, VHS. Get some laser discs going on. Just make a fucking shrine to the series. Either way, type of thing you can read in like 20 minutes. So if you want that Jason Goes to Hell fix, this is a pretty good option. So get out there and check it out, guys, and stay tuned because we will be taking another trip into the Happy Hour House of Horror here real soon.